let's put aside for a moment any distracting worry or challenge or obstacle that we're facing, and let's savor three special blessings that Jehovah has given all of us as His people. Our first blessing is alluded to at Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 18. You might take your eyes there to Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 18. There, in contrast with the path or the way of the wicked one, we're told that the path of the righteous, that's your path, that's my path, is like the bright morning light that grows brighter and brighter until full daylight.
This is not about spiritual light. In context, Proverbs chapter 4 speaks of wisdom and its benefits. Just as the Father teaches us to act wisely in life in order to avoid the calamities that the foolish face because of their carelessness. This spiritual light application is entirely invented by the organization. It is an attempt to justify false teachings that the organization has had to correct. In particular, verses 14 to 19 compare the wise with the foolish, and how much wisdom is useful. The wise will not stumble in the dark like the foolish.
Well, this reminds us that we have all been recipients of spiritual enlightenment. And that's quite a contrast to Satan's system, which currently is in dense spiritual darkness. Think about what we enjoy because of what Jehovah has given us in the way of spiritual enlightenment. We know things that the world has no clue about. We know that Jehovah is our God, the God who causes to become and can cause you and me to become whatever's needed to fulfill His good purpose and to bring us joy.
Here Brother Dellinger refers to the meaning of Jehovah's name as He causes to become. Unfortunately, the organization has got the meaning of that name wrong. They base their view on the opinion of some scholars, who are not mentioned who they are, that the root verb havah, to become, tends to the causative form in the imperfect state in the Hebrew verb system. The only problem is that this havah verb is a so-called weak verb, which is made up of consonants that do not bend into more than one or two forms, but never up to the causative. Therefore, it cannot be an imperfective state and causative form of that verb. So the interpretation of the meaning of the name that Jehovah would mean He causes to become cannot hold. It does not conform to the Hebrew verb system. You can easily find this out for yourself, for example by consulting Hebrew verb tables.
We know about Jesus, the powerful angels, the establishment of the kingdom in 1914, a real government.
The kingdom of God was not established in 1914. This whole teaching falls back to 607 BCE, because it is wrong with the organization. Ancient Jerusalem was destroyed in 587 BCE.
None of this is any mystery to us. We know the truth. We know that the big issue is not what we may see in the headlines of the world's newspapers. The big issue has to do with universal sovereignty. And who will we choose to support, Jehovah's side or Satan's side? Thanks to the gift of spiritual enlightenment, a path that keeps getting brighter and brighter for us as we walk closely with Jehovah and His organization.
The term Jehovah and His organization is used repeatedly in speeches and publications. No doubt this is intended to reinforce the idea among the mind-controlled that if you leave this organization, you leave Jehovah. It is like a kind of preventive mechanism to keep the disfellowshipped and other leavers in the mental grip of the organization. And because they have been inculcated with the idea that if you are not in Jehovah's organization, you have turned your back on Him and you will be destroyed.
We know why we suffer, why we die, and how temporary all of these challenging circumstances are. Let's consider a second spiritual blessing. It's referred to at Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 22. Please read that with me. The little one will become 1,000, and the small one a mighty nation. I myself, Jehovah, will speed it up in its own time. What's the blessing? As foretold, we are seeing spiritual growth. Our spiritual family is getting larger and larger by the day.
Here the organization is doing the same trick as it has done many times before. It is baking a secondary fulfillment of the Bible's prophecy. There is no second and greater fulfillment of this prophecy of Isaiah. It is a completely fabricated and misapplied teaching of the organization, just like the 7 times of Daniel 4, which the organization uses to calculate the year 1914.
In fact, on average, during the 2017 service year, each week, 5,400 were baptized in symbol of their dedication to Jehovah. And in harmony with the prophecy, this growth will accelerate.
If the growth was really coming from Jehovah, why would it be affected by pandemics, etc.? Today, growth has dropped alarmingly. The current weekly rate is now only around 2,800. That is almost half of what it was 5 to 6 years ago.
Well, what does that mean for us? It means that our work here at Bethel, at remote translation offices, at facilities doing maintenance and cleaning and caring for these beautiful facilities dedicated to Jehovah's worship, at the assembly halls, is urgent, necessary work that supports our growing spiritual family. It's another one of the blessings that Jehovah has given you and me, this blessing of seeing firsthand the growth of our spiritual family and being able to support it. Well, consider in that same chapter of Isaiah, chapter 60, an additional blessing, a third, mentioned in verse 17. Instead of the copper, I will bring in gold, and instead of the iron, I will bring in silver. Instead of the wood, copper, and instead of the stones, iron. And I will appoint peace as your overseers and righteousness as your task assigners. Have you seen the fulfillment of this prophecy during this special time, the conclusion of the system of things? Indeed, we have. We have seen, experienced improvements in organizational arrangements. Some in our families of congregation and here at Bethel remember when a congregation had a congregation servant and not a body of elders.
As mentioned earlier, this prophecy of Isaiah has no secondary fulfillment in this time of the end. Anyway, the elders' arrangement is as new a product for Jehovah's Witnesses as it has been since 1972. Before that, congregations were run in a totally unbiblical way. Jesus had had 53 years, since 1919, to correct this. One would imagine that this was the first thing he would have corrected as head of the congregation.
When countries had a branch servant and not a branch committee. When direction was given often by the president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society rather than by a clearly established governing body.
And here Brother Dellinger admits that there was no governing body before 1971. In practice, before that, there was a one-man show. The organization was run by only one man, the president of the society. See the table at the end of the Proclaimer's book, pages 718 to 723, to see how it shows that this whole unbiblical governing body concept was invented in the 1970s. There's plenty of data and facts to prove that neither Jehovah nor Jesus were ever the driving force behind this organization.
During the 1970s, though, there were improvements. Direction in the congregations was given principally by a body of elders, not by one individual. Think of more recent organizational improvements having to do with our theocratic schools. The School for Kingdom Evangelizers is another one of those recent. When direction was given often by the president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society rather than by a clearly established governing body.